Hey guys, welcome to the stream. Today I am going to be doing homework like usual, but this time I'm going to be making a Turing machine. Now I have started off by copying all the files from my previous assignment for this class, which was a deterministic finite state machine, because some of the setup is going to be is going to be very similar. But I would first like to explain what a Turing machine is and how it's used for those of you who aren't familiar with a Turing machine. So let me open up this PowerPoint that I made. Okay, so this is an example of a Turing machine, and for those of you who saw my my finite state machine stream or video on YouTube, which isn't uploaded at this time, but once the semester is over, I plan on uploading all of my programming streams, one after another. So the concept of a Turing machine is it gets an input string on a piece of infinite tape. The infinite tape is separated into boxes. Hey, Rhino. And each box contains one character, and it's infinite in both directions. So let me show you an example. In this example, I have inputted the string 011011. This Turing machine should decrement whatever binary value you give it by 1. So the result should be 011010. The underscore on either side represents a blank on either side of the input string. So since it's infinite tape on either side, you can technically have an infinite number of underscores on either side. But it's more convenient to only display one to represent those blanks, and if any of the characters in the middle turn into blanks, then I'll just turn them into underscores. If the string needs to lengthen, which it shouldn't for this example, then I'll just add characters in and there'll still be one underscore on either end. So the _/_r means that we will, if we read an underscore or a blank, then in the selected character, which is red, we will write an underscore and move the position of the tape right. So it's read/write/r, and the magenta circle is what state we're currently in. The pink circle is a state that we're not in. The double outline circle is the halting state, which means that it will end, the program will stop. And each line, or each arrow, is a transition based on the rules I just demonstrated of read/write/direction to go. So, since the selected is an underscore, then we write an underscore to that, and we move right. So now, the selected is 0. And you can see there's a transition, read 0, write 1, move right. And there's the same, and it transitions back to 1. Hey, Ellipse. So now, we're at a 1. It says read 1, write 0, go right, transition to 1. And so it's just going to continue doing that until we get all the way to the right to the first blank. Then we can transition to read blank, write blank, left. Then, if it's a 1, we transition back to 2 and move left. If it's a 0, we transition to 3 and move right. Well, since it's a 0, we write 1 and transition right. Then, state 3 does basically what state 1 did, except if it gets an underscore, then it moves left again. Well, it's an underscore, so it moves left. Now, state 4 We see a 1, we write 0, move left. See a 0, write 1, move left. And do the same thing over and over again, basically inverting every bit until we get to the underscore. Then we move right and transition to 5, which is the halting state, which means we're done. So it ended up with the string I told you. We started off with 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, and ended up with 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 0. It decremented it by 1. So that's the step through with this example Turing machine. And that is the Turing machine that my professor gave me to test my program. It can be demonstrated, or it can be displayed like this in the text format that she wants us to read. So I am going to keep that over to the side. And basically what this is number of states ID of CAE loves halting state. And then each of these is the transitions. So that format is state ID, so the ID of the current state, then space, then the read character, then the write character, then the direction it goes, and then what state it ends up to, then the end state. So what state it ends up going to. And that's the same format for all of these. Okay, so it's going to be similar to my previous code, so that's why I copied it all. Get file is going to be the same, except it's going to be tm.txt, because TM stands for Turing machine instead of DFA for deterministic finite automata. Excuse me. Then get input string should be the same, except let me look at the PDF. Input first line v5, second line okay, it doesn't say what to say if you are inputted in improper string. So like, since we're only supposed to accept the format of the string is supposed to be underscore, then ones and zeros, then underscore again. It doesn't say in the instructions what to do if it's not in that format. So I'm just going to put in a to-do. Format checking. Okay. Then read file. That just goes to a list of strings, so that should stay the same. Create DSFM from file. That should change, but that's more complex changing than I'm going to start off with. String to int array should stay the same. String to char array should stay the same. Int array contain should stay the same. I don't know if I'm going to need all of these. They are utility functions, so I'm just going to keep them, because if I need them, they will stay the same. If I won't need them, then I'll just delete them later. So I'm next going to check DFSM, because I really want this to actually be rename Turing machine. And yes, I know I could have just called it extension language. Okay. Oh, it just wanted to change all references to DF. Okay. I could just call it tm.java, but like tm has a different meaning in mine. It means trademark, so I'm just gonna stick with Turing machine. tm.txt has to be that because it was in the instructions that it will read tm.txt. So the states will also be different. So before I continue with Turing machine, I'm going to modify state so that when I change Turing machine, everything will be valid. So in a state, we will need the ID, which should be an int. We will need direction. So, and that should be, I'm going to make it a Boolean and say false for left, true for right. Instead of accepting, I'm going to say halting, because we're not, so a finite state machine takes rules for whether a string is acceptable, and it goes through, and if it ends in an accepting state, it says, yes, the string is acceptable. If it ends in a non-accepting state, it says, no, the string is not acceptable. A Turing machine, or at least this instance of a Turing machine, doesn't say whether or not the string is acceptable. It actually modifies the string. So it's not whether it's an accepting state or not, it's whether it's a halting state or not. Because if it doesn't land on a halting state, then it just keeps going. So that will be a Boolean. I guess since this is Java, this should say Boolean, and that should say Boolean instead of bool. And then transitions. Oh, then it wouldn't have direction, because direction depends on the transitions. And transition would be a character to transition on. It's actually a hash table, but that hash table will contain a character to transition on, an integer for where to transition to, and a Boolean for the direction it's going. Okay. Can I actually put a third value in here, or will I have to do something special? Incorrect number of arguments. That figures. So how am I going to do this? Well, I suppose Google will help me. Oh, it's opening over there. And in a tiny window. Okay, how to get... No, I don't know what words to search. Right now I am just going to make all transitions go right. That is very incorrect. But just to get something up and running, I'm just going to make all go move right. So then I will need to change this to halting, and halting, and halting, halting, halting. Let me just do find and replace. Capitalization, replace all. Replace all. Okay. So get halting should stay the same. Get transition, that will change, but let me actually write a to-do here. Add direction. get ID will stay the same. Okay. So I guess there wasn't really as much changes to this that I thought there would be. Oh wait, no, that would be in transition. Okay. So then, instead of verify string, it would have, I suppose, I'll just say process string and input string, and then string input equals string dot value of input string. Okay, so that's so that it doesn't change the actual string, it's getting a copy of the string. Current state equals states 0. That's so that we start at the 0th state. While current state not equal null and input length is greater than 0. Okay, that's because I was substringing. So what I actually want to do now is do int current char. Actually, I'm just gonna call it I. I is so much easier. Okay, so while current state equals null and I is less than, no, it's infinite. I doesn't have to, doesn't matter what index I is at. I is infinite, or the string as a, not string, sorry. The tape that the string is written on is infinite in both directions. So it doesn't really matter what I is, because it could be negative 30 and still technically be correct, although since I'm working with a string as in the Java variable type, technically can't be negative 30, so all the indexes would adjust properly, but it technically wouldn't matter what I is. If I goes outside the string, then I would just add more underscores. So then it would be and current state dot is get halting and not get halting. So what that means is if it is a halting state, it will return true, but true would keep the while loop going. So the not makes it false, and so the while loop will continue it, or the while loop will stop if it's a halting state, because that's what the halting state does. It stops it. So then we want input.char at I. Integer transition equals current state dot get transition current char. Yeah, okay. Boolean Boolean direction equals true. So what that means is it will always go right. I will make that change based on the finite state machine, or based on the state later, but right now it's just going to go right. String next input equals, excuse me, input substring 1. I don't want that. There is no such thing as next input now. It's all just one input. If transition equals null, invalid input. That shouldn't technically happen, but on the off chance, I'm going to keep that. This format here might be different, but I'll change that later. State, next state equals get the, yes. So it gets the state from the array based on the ID. System out printf. So it prints out the current state ID, the input, then the next state ID, the next input, and then, or empty. That's gonna be commented out for now. And then current state equals next state. Okay, so what am I trying to do? With a Turing machine, I want it to, I need to see my, see the actual Turing machine to think better. Okay, so I know I'm jumping around, but going back to state, I'm actually going to create a new file that is transition.java. And so that means that state will have character transition instead of character integer. Transitions dot get input. Yeah, okay. What don't you like? Transition cannot be resolved to a type. Why can't transitions be resolved to a type? I don't know, but I will get to that in a moment. Public transition, need a constructor. Okay, and a transition, so char right Boolean direction and int transition state. I'm just gonna say state. It's gonna be implied that it's what we're transitioning to. So then private char right private Boolean direction private int state right equals right, direction equals direction, and state equals state. Oh, that's a bad name actually, because state is also a type. I'm just gonna say end state. If I come up with a better name for it later, or if someone in the chat comes up with a better name, I will name it that later. And then public char get right char return right public Boolean get direction return direction public int get end state and actually let me change that to end state ID. Okay, you good? Okay, it now recognizes it as a type. So that should be done. State should be done. So then this is no longer an integer, it's a transition. And now anytime it says transition, it needs to say dot get end state ID. Process string is no longer going to be a boolean, it's going to be a string itself, if I can spell string. And it's going to return input, I suppose. If it's invalid, I guess it's going to return null. Direction is no longer always going to be true because that's taken care of in the transition. Okay, so if transition is not null, next state equals getting the next state. String next input would equal. How do I replace just one character in a string? Input dot okay, back to Google. How to replace char. How do I word this? Java. How to replace character at index in string. Let's look at Techie Delay. Do they have an answer? Yes, that is an answer, but I don't think it's a very good one. Let's try the string builder. Set char at using a string builder, I suppose. But what I'm gonna do instead is string replace char at and then return input. Oh, I need int I. And okay, this should work, I guess. What don't you? Oh, it's probably complaining that it can be static because it doesn't include anything from the blah blah blah. But what are you complaining about? It's never used locally. Oh, because it's, yeah. Okay. Replace char at input I transition dot get right char. So I want to say I equals transition dot get direction, and I'm gonna do a ternary operator. So if get direction is true, that means we want to go right. So that would be I plus plus. It would actually be plus plus I. Else minus minus I. Okay, so that changed the direction. And I suppose we can just do input equals and state equals. I don't think current. I don't think the next state then is all necessary. So if get direction is true, it goes right. If get direction is false, it goes left. Now, remember what I said about, excuse me, how I can be negative because it's infinite tape, but because we're using a string, it technically can't. So I think that means that next, in the while loop, before we transition, we need to say if I is less than 0 or I is greater than or equal to input.length. So that means if I is -1 or less, or I is greater than the maximum index, we then need to adjust the string and adjust I. So I guess technically that would actually be while. Okay, so let's actually just start with too small. So if it's too small, then input equals underscore plus input and I plus plus. So let's say it's -3 and we have just one underscore. Then it will become 2 underscores at the beginning and -2. Become 3 underscores at the beginning and -1, and 4 underscores at the beginning and 0. So that's how we adjusted there. Then, very similar code, if I is greater than or equal input.length, then input equals I plus underscore and I guess we don't need to I minus minus because we're not offsetting anything. It's just literally adding on to the string. Now technically, we could end up with an issue where it gets longer and we add or where I is getting further and further away from the end of the string, and then it gets closer, and then we end up with a bunch of underscores at the end, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. So, if I did this correctly, which I doubt I did because it's the first try and you never get code right on the first try, then I will change this to TM and change that to TM, and this should actually be Turing. And actually, in this case, I'm just going to say from TM.file. And this will be TM from file. I'm trying to get some semblance of working code before the string is over, which is in approximately 15 minutes. Okay, so the format is, the first one is how many states there are. So parse int lines dot get 0. So the first line is how many states there are. Whoops. The second line is which one, or which state or states. So instead of being an int array, it's going to be int halting state. And it's just going to be integer.parseInt lines get 1. Okay. The next is going to be the alphabet. Is that in this? Oh no. So I don't know if... Yes, I am doing this for a class. This is for Theoretical Foundations of Computer Science. In a previous stream, I did a finite state machine for a project. This time I'm doing a Turing machine. I don't know if she wants us to always use 0 and 1 for the alphabet, or if we just get the alphabet based on what transitions are available. So I'm just going to remove that. So for int I equals 0 in state. Okay, so that loops through the states, creates a new hash table of character and transition. Then int array next states equals string to int array line get I plus 3. I don't want that. First of all, it will be I plus 2, and I don't want it to be a string to character array. I'm just gonna dot split. There we go. Okay. So then, okay, trying to convert my previous code is just adding a bit of confusion for me. So I'm just going to write new code and comment out the previous code. So it's going to be states I equals new state I for the index. Then it's not showing me what's in the constructor. Sorry, not index, ID. They're practically the same thing. Okay, so I for the ID. If it's halting, so it would be halting state equals I. So if halting state equals I, then it's halting. If it doesn't, then it's not. Couldn't be more simpler. And then transitions. Okay. So before that, we need to actually create transitions. So for... How did I create the transitions before? For int j equals 0, next states dot length. What? What was next states before I changed it then? Because next states is not right. Okay, so... I understand. It's a completely different format than what I was working with before. I thought the formats were more similar than they were. So what I really want to do is int j. Actually, I'm just going to put a semicolon there. And you'll see why eventually. So line idx equal less than lines dot size And no. Line IDX plus plus. I'm just gonna do int j. It's so much easier. Some of the stuff I do might not seem like it makes sense, but that's because I start typing one thing, then in my mind I figure out a different way to do it, and I finish typing the new way instead of the old way. I just thought of a different way to do this. So for int I equals 2, I is less than lines.size I plus plus. Okay, so now it's going through the remaining lines. List transitions. I can't call it that. All transitions. Let's call it remaining transitions. Equals new array list transition. Okay. So my mouse stopped working. Whoa, mouse, what are you doing? Okay. So here is where I want the string array. Let's just call it line equals lines dot get I dot split by a space. Can I actually make that a char? Nope, it has to be a string. Okay. Okay. No, these are not online classes. These are actually in-person classes, but a lot of it is done on the computer because it's, well, a programming class. But yes, this is in person, but this is homework. Yes, so far I am passing the class, and I should get a really good grade, based on my current predictions. I have an Excel spreadsheet set up with a calculator, set up to calculate my grades for all my classes. I should get an A or a B, probably, unless I do really bad on this project, which I doubt it, or really bad on the final, which possibly, depending on what she has on the final, but it's unlikely. I might get a C on the final, but I don't expect to get anything lower than that. Okay, so then remaining transitions dot add. Why are there so many spaces? New transition. Okay, so the first one is where it goes to. That means it needs to be a hash table. Dang it. And in care. No, it can't be it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is add I'm adding the read care to the to the thing, even though it will be unnecessary for a later part of the program. But I guess it's necessary for this part. I don't want to create a separate data type just for... Okay, so then it will be integer. Okay. Setting sync is because of successive authorization failures. Okay, whatever. Okay, so remaining transitions dot add? No, it's dot set put. That's what it is. The key will be line sub 0. Wait, it lets me do that? But it's an integer. That doesn't make sense. Integer dot parse int lines or line sub 0. And the value will be new transition, which will be readchar, which would be line sub 1 dot char at 0, which is easier than converting a string to a character. Right will be... I did this at the wrong spot. That's where I wanted it. Right will be line sub 2 dot char at 0. Direction will be line sub 3 dot equals R. So if it equals R, it's right. If it doesn't equal R, then I'm assuming it's going to be left. Technically, someone could put potato, and it would count that as left because potato doesn't equal R. And end state, integer dot parse int line sub 4. Now, in here, I will do for int j equals 0, which is, this is like the third time I'm typing this for statement, or this for loop. J is less than remaining transitions dot size, j plus plus, if dot O. Can a hash table have more than one entry per... I guess we will find out. So I will... Actually, let me put that... I will comment that out so it doesn't needlessly go through the loop. Put that in. What's this error? Process string. What don't you like? Because it's a string and not a boolean. What is this? Create. Okay. So, right there. Now I can run it without an error. Let me move this over here. I'll continue. What? Why didn't it? Okay, stop. Run this again. Let's try it now. Okay, continue. It creates a list. Lines.getZero is 6 number. Because I put my notes in this file. And then for some reason saved it. So it gets a parsing error. Restart the program. Okay. Now lines 0 is 6. Good. Good. And line 0 is 0. Okay. So continue. Line 0 is 0. Line 0 is 1. Line 0 is 1 again. Okay. So the first one is the new transition. This one, it will put. It just replaced it, didn't it? Okay, so remaining transitions. Yeah, it replaced it. I need a... So what I really need to do is make this a list. Go back to an array list. Set this to add. Take this out. New transition. And in transition, private int start state. Not private. Start state. I know I'm past 6, but I want to get something running. Start state equals start state. Get start state ID. Okay. So if I do this, then remaining transitions outside. If remaining transitions dot get j dot transition t equals remaining transitions dot get j, so I don't need to get it twice. T dot get start state ID equals I. Remaining transitions dot remove I. j minus minus, so that when it increments it stays the same because we just removed something. And I want transitions dot add dot put t dot read char t. Okay. So now, if I run this, it'll hopefully work. Loading file. Let me remove this breakpoint and continue. String to evaluate. Underscore 110110. Exception, null pointer. Okay, well, I think that's going to end the stream today. Sorry that I didn't get a working program, but I will continue this next week, or if I'm not available next week, then the week after. But this assignment is due the 26th, so I have time to complete it, and I will try to finish that on one of my streams until the 26th. I have like 3 weeks for that. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you're on the YouTube side, click the like button, click the notification bell, click subscribe. Leave any comments if you figured out what I did wrong, although at this point, by the time it's released on YouTube, my assignment will be submitted already, so guess that wouldn't be worth much. But I'd like to hear your thoughts anyway on what you would have done differently. My website is wix100.github.io. Links are in the description for YouTube or in my panels for Twitch. Check everything out. See what's going on in my life, or what I let you guys know what's going on in my life. Till next time, bye.